Good afternoon. I'm going to kick things off here. Welcome to the first of 5 scheduled meetings between Fire District 4 and City of Everett, the Regional Fire Authority Planning Committee. My name is Karen Reed. I'm an independent local government consultant. I have been engaged to facilitate this discussion with you, and I'm really happy to be here. These are very important discussions for all sorts of reasons for each of your agencies, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I'm going to say a couple of words about our meeting today, and then we'll dive into some introductions. If you had a chance to scan the agenda, you'll know we're going to go for 90 minutes today. There will be no public comment section, although the public are able to observe or listen in to the call today. We're going to begin with some welcomes and introductions, and then move into just reviewing the mission of the committee, some of the information we've gathered for you to get here today and get launched, talk about the idea of this being an exploratory phase through April, look at the website that we are in the process of putting up that will help the public and yourselves as well if you need to track what we're up to. And then we'll sort of move into some of the more substance of the effort in front of us. I'll talk to you about some of the themes I heard when I met in advance with not only the chiefs, but all 6 members of the planning committee. We will look at the overall scope of the questions and the project that we will be tackling. And then we'll hear from the chiefs, who will provide an overview of each of the 2 districts. We'll have some comments from union leadership, and we will have a closing roundtable before we sign off today. Since we are in a virtual meeting contact, I'm hoping that folks that are committee members in particular can leave your cameras on. If you're not speaking, probably good to know to keep the mute on, but know where that mute button is. And if you have questions, it's conceivable that with only 6 members, y'all can just dive in, but let's try it for now. If you have questions, put your hands up, click on the little hand icon, and we'll call on you in order to respond to the questions. And with that, I'd like to move to the introductions and maybe start with the District 4 people. Well, let's give Commissioner Merritt a couple more minutes. We'll start with the Everett folks. If you guys could simply introduce yourself by name, title, and perhaps how long you've been affiliated with Everett City Hall. And maybe we could start either Council President Stonecipher. Would you like to kick things off here?
Sorry, sure, yes. Hi, I'm Brenda Stonecipher. I'm this year serving as the president of the City Council, and this is my 17th year on the City Council.
I think you really must have started in grade school. It's just, sorry, I still can't wrap my head around that one.
Thank you.
Thanks. Scott, Councilmember Bader.
Thanks. Yes, Scott Bader. Been on the council for about 8 years. Currently live in North Everett and spent much of my life in South Everett as well. So, but almost lifelong Everett resident. So glad to be here and eager to hear more today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. Mayor Franklin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cassie Franklin. I was elected mayor about 3.5 years ago and was on the council for about 2 years before that. Happy to be here today.
Thanks. And out at District 4, Commissioner Schmalker.
Let's see, I've been with the fire department 39.5 years. First 26.5 as a volunteer firefighter UT, and the last 12, 13, whatever the rest of that is, as commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Flapp?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I was elected in 2017, so that's my experience with the fire department since then.
Thank you. And we'll have Commissioner Merritt introduce himself when he arrives. Chief DeMarco, do you want to take the helm and introduce your staff here today and yourself?
Certainly. So thank you. My name is Dave DeMarco. I'm the fire chief here in Everett. I've been chief for 3 years. Mayor Franklin hired me, not for my looks. And I've worked for the Everett Fire Department for coming up on 27 years now. And I'm going to go down the list of the Everett Fire staff that are present in this meeting. And we'll start with Mike Calvert. Can you pop on and say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mike Everett. I'm the Assistant Chief of Operations here at Everett. I'm a lifelong Everett resident, and I've been with the department a little over 20 years.
Thanks, Mike. Rich, could you pop on?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Rich Llewellyn. I'm the Assistant Chief of Administration, and I like to say I've been here now for 30 months, like 2.5 years.
We stole Rich from the Spokane Valley 3 years ago, and we're happy to have him. And Curtis, could you pop on and say hello?
Hello, this is Curtis Brown, Fire Marshal for the City of Everett. I've been here about 2.5 years as well.
And we poached Curtis out of Southern California from a city of comparable size to the City of Everett. And then Matt Mueller, briefly, could you just say hello?
Hello, I'm Matt Mueller, Administrative Assistant. I'll be taking notes. I've been with the city for 10 years, 5 years with Transit, and 5 years with the Fire Department.
Thank you. And then we do have I think that Sebastian is representing the local today. Sebastian, could you say hi?
Hi, Sebastian Fittig. I'm the Vice President of Local 46. I'm also a fire captain for Engine 2 in North Everett, and I've been with the city this is my 18th year.
Thanks, Sebastian. Did I miss anybody from Everett? No? Okay, I'll pass the mic over to Don.
Hello, Don Waller. I'm the chief. I've been at the district for about 18 months and chief for about 7 months. Happy to be here and excited to start with talks like this as soon as I got here. Just off camera right, you can come around, is Lieutenant Mansfield. He's also our local president. You can wave.
Hello, Whitney Mansfield, President Local 2694. I've been here for 20 years. I'm also excited to be part of the process and give some information in these meetings.
And most people saw Christine Heike before we started the meeting. She's one of our office specialists that's been helping out, and most of my other staff is on vacation. About half of them are on the flight to Hawaii, and other ones are other places in the state. So it's just us.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else? I think that is everyone that needs to be introduced. And when we do these in future meetings, I'll try to shake it up a little bit so we can all get to know each other a little bit. But that'll get us launched for today. And now I'm gonna speak for a few minutes about the mission of the committee and some of the materials that are gonna help support us as we move forward. And if Dave could punch up that short PowerPoint, that would be great. There we go. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is the mission statement that we're proposing for you all, and it's pretty straightforward, but I wanted to call a couple of things to your attention. First, in the very first line there, you will see that we've phrased this mission as to explore and potentially propose a full-on RFA plan. So we've tried to seg out this work to have the exploratory phase, after which you will decide collectively and individually whether you would like to proceed into actually development of an RFA plan. The middle part of this mission statement covers all the aspects of an RFA that are required by the statutes to go into the RFA plan itself. And the last sentence, I would just note that this committee is advisory to the Board of Commissioners of Fire District 4. And although they are all here today, technically you are still advisory to them. And we're also advisory to the mayor and city council as a whole of the city of Everett. Are there any questions about this? I'm going to just keep going if not. The next slide is about our binders. You probably all received these very handsome binders. My thanks to Matt Mueller and Christine Montaigne-Heike for putting those together for us. And this slide just shows you the information you can find in there. You've got contact lists so you can find each other on the committee. By phone, we will not publish your phone numbers or your emails, but you can find each other or any of us on the team at any time if you need to. The mission statement I just went over is included in there behind the Roles and Rules tab, along with some proposed ground rules I'm hoping to get a thumbs up on from you later today. and a draft committee charter, sort of more official rules of the road that we will take up at the next meeting. There's a basic info tab with an overview of what regional fire authorities are all about, some definitions of terms you may or may not be used to dealing with every day, and a sort of a basic starter set of frequently asked questions, which will evolve as we learn more and make decisions as a group here. But for now, this is sort of the starter set of questions that we would be posting on the website so the public will know what the basic parameters are of this discussion as well. Every meeting, we will send you a PDF file with all the meeting materials. We'll send that to you in advance several days. And those will just be slotted in by meeting number behind tabs 1 through 20. And you'll see the meeting materials for today are behind tab number 1. At the back of the binder, we've got full copies of 4 sample RFA plans that have interesting things in each one of them, which you might want to take a look at. If you scan them, you'll see that they are not terribly long, and they all look largely similar in the way they're formatted. And so although the list of things we're going to work through is somewhat daunting, at the end, the plan document itself is pretty straightforward. We will, in addition to sending you the meeting packets electronically in advance of each meeting, you can also go down to City Hall, Council office, or to the District 4 headquarters and get a printout of those materials to pop into your binders in advance of each meeting, or you can print them out as well, whichever is more convenient for you. Any questions there? Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, if you would please, Chief. This sort of outlines the exploratory phase approach. There's also a document about this behind meeting tab 1, page number 2, so right behind the agenda, behind meeting tab number 1. We are sort of thinking at this stage of a bunch of different sort of in-depth data presentations for you in this phase, but and you can see what they are outlined here on this slide. If you would like us to change this up and provide more opportunity to talk about topics as between yourselves or bring forward another kind of information, we can do that. We want to make sure that this exploratory phase is responsive to your needs as committee members. This is the plan that we'll be working towards unless you redirect us at any point, which is fine. The next slide, are there any questions about the exploratory phase? I'm sorry. Okay, so at the end of the exploratory phase, I should probably just cover, I'm sorry, can you back up one slide, Chief? The text in blue. At the end of this 5th meeting, we will ask you whether you are prepared to recommend back to your respective legislative bodies and the mayor that you would like to, you believe that we should proceed to the next phase of work. And at that point, that recommendation at the end of April, you'll either make it or you'll say, no, we need a little bit more information before we can make it. But if you can make that recommendation after meeting 5, what would then happen is we prepare briefings that go back up to the full council for discussion and back to the Board of Commissioners for discussion so that they can separately make the decision about whether or not to proceed to the next phase. So that's what would happen in early May if you make that recommendation at the end of the 5th meeting or thereabouts. Okay, sorry for that backing up. Let's go forward to the next slide, please. Thank you. So to make sure that the public knows what the heck we're up to, we are going to have a website that will be hosted on Everett's website, but there will be a link on the Snohomish County Fire District 4 website that will launch people over to that place and have so the public, no matter where they're coming from, will get access to the same information. And we will have basic information about who is on the committee, what the mission of the committee is. Those FAQs that I spoke to earlier will be posted there, as well as agendas and materials and meeting summaries once approved for all of your meetings, as well as also information about upcoming meeting dates. Next slide, please. The website may look a little bit different when it's up on the Everett side of things, but the cover page will have at the top and you'll see there's a little spot, a little white bar at the top there. You can't read any of this, but inside that white bar is going to be an email address where somebody from anyone can submit a question or a comment via email. We will monitor that email and we will bring forward to you any information or questions that we receive so that you know what we're hearing, if anything, from folks out there. Below that, there's a slideshow which sort of goes through the frequently asked questions. There is a link to the Word document on frequently asked questions. Below, you can see your names will be posted there, who's representing Everett, who's representing District 4, when are our scheduled meeting dates. You'll be able to click on the meeting packets and the meeting minutes. And I think in the map section there, we'll actually just have your mission statement posted. So I think the thing I would just call to your attention is that the frequently asked questions, which are in your binder back behind roles and rules, if you've had a chance to scan those and you don't see anything too scary in there, we would like to go ahead and, I'm not seeing those. Why am I not seeing those? They should be there. Frequently asked questions, we would be, well, let's just hold off on that. There are frequently asked questions. They should be in your binders at some point here. I thought they were behind roles and rules. And once, if you're okay with them, we will go ahead and get the website up and running. And we'll maybe send those out to you after the meeting. And yeah.
They are in the number 1 meeting packet tab, page 4.
Page 4. Oh, good. I knew I had seen them in here. I was just quietly losing my mind. Thank you, Chief. So there they are on pages 4 and 5. If those look okay to you, we can go ahead and make the websites live as soon as Everett is ready. So I just want to maybe pause for a second and see if folks have any questions or concerns about those FAQs now that we have found them. Thank you. And if anyone has any concerns about having those websites go live as soon as folks are ready at the IT end of things.
Karen, this is Cassie. I don't have any concerns with those. I was just wondering, with all of these meetings being on Zoom, and I know we're in an imperfect world or on Microsoft Teams, for me, it would be helpful if our if at the future meetings our fire commissioners and team from District 4 could have separate cameras so that we can see each individual commissioner. I find it hard to kind of connect in this format when I can't see everybody's smiling face. So I think that would be really helpful for me as we work together as teams.
Well, let's just, it would be helpful for me, but let's just see District 4 folks. Is that something that you, how would you feel about that? You've always made a choice to be all there together in the same room, which certainly has benefits for you. Is it possible that we could set this up so that we can all see you on separate cameras?
We'll have to discuss it. That's not how we do it. And we have technological difficulties, and that's why we were hoping that we could meet in person and stream it. And I think that needs to be our goals. I understand Everett has some issues, but that would probably be an easier hurdle than our hurdle of technology.
Okay. Well,
I wonder if there's a way that we could be helpful, and that might be something that we can ask with our IT team, if there's a way for us to loan the technology for the meetings. I know it's not ideal that we can't all be in person, but we're not all vaccinated and because we're not all part of the fire service, so we really need to wait until we can all meet together safely, and our council is able to meet together in person, which we're not there yet. So if you guys can discuss, that sounds great, and we can try to discuss and see if there's something we can do to be helpful if it's possible to make that happen. Thanks so much for your consideration.
Thanks, Mir. Thanks, District 4 folks, for thinking that one through and letting us know what might be possible or what you are willing to explore there. That'd be great. Anyone else have questions or thoughts about the websites that hopefully can go live shortly if you are comfortable with those FAQs?
Karen, just FYI for the group, Everett can turn on that public-facing website at the end of the meeting with no other IT hurdles.
You guys are fast. Okay, anyone at District 4 have concerns about the websites going live with the information that we've provided? Maybe just
websites going live. No.
You're good with that.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, couldn't hear you. Thank you. And Everett folks, are you good with this information going live at the end of the meeting today? Thank you, Cassie. I'm not seeing Scott or Councilmember Stonecipher, but I will trust that they will speak up if
I'm
they
good with that.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, good. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay. With that, we'll take this thing live after the meeting today. So let's move on to, I'm going to move on to agenda item 3, which starts dealing with the themes that I think I heard when I met with you all in advance of our kickoff here today. That themes write-up is at page 6 of the meeting packet behind tab 1. And I would say overall, there was a lot of interest and recognition about, again, how important this discussion is, but not people were not at a level of highly detailed, it's got to be like this or it's got to be like that. So people have a lot of ideas, but no one seems super dug in on a lot of stuff at this point, which is good since we're at the beginning of the conversation. Most of y'all mentioned the idea that being able to improve service levels was a major reason to explore this RFA. In addition, increased financial sustainability across the board for both agencies and the ability to capture economies of scale were mentioned as reasons to pursue this discussion. There were a number of concerns mentioned. The one that reached a level of consensus was concern about loss of governance control. Obviously, each of you are separately, completely in charge of your fire department now. If an RFA is created, you will be sharing that in some way, and that is a change. And a lot of folks mentioned that, you know, will we be able to work out a new governance table that works for us? There were a number of other concerns that you can see mentioned there at the bottom of page 1 and page 2, and those sort of get echoed throughout the set of questions we went over together. In terms of defining success, there was consensus here that would include demonstrating improved services to the public could be accomplished through the RFA. There was a lot of discussion about costs as being part of the success equation, but there was not a consensus about whether success meant less cost, the same cost, or a little bit more as long as we could explain it. It's just understanding that cost is going to be an important issue. Barriers to success, you can see a number listed there on page 2, cultural differences, local identity, our ability to communicate well together, ability to make some compromises to build a new governance structure, making the case to the taxpayers, getting the support from labor, those are the main issues there. Both sides think that their public probably has a pretty good perception of the level of fire service that they're getting and of the operation, so that's good. In terms of what's going to be important to voters, people identified taxing levels as a consistent theme. Again, whether they had to be more or less or the same, there wasn't a consensus, just that question of how much is it going to cost me is understandably going to be an important question for the voters. There was not consensus around what the governance table should look like. There were a few opposing positions about whether it made sense to have a model going forward that had a lot of existing elected officials on it, or whether we should be moving to something that's more directly elected or a mix. Funding, there was not a lot of consensus around that. Some were excited about the benefit charge, others were not sure about that idea of being whether that should be included in the funding package. In terms of service levels, District 4 was focusing on the ability to improve service levels through some of the more advanced technical skills and administrative capabilities that they perceive Everett to have, Everett's focus on the benefits here was primarily over maintaining service levels over time, but they also see some advantages to merging with District 4, and particularly several folks mentioned the training center that District 4 has. There's a few notes about facilities on page 4 of this summary. Just that there are some facilities issues. It's not clear to me how much we actually need to get into all of the ownership issues as part of, with the 2 of the District 4 stations as part of this discussion, but that was mentioned by everybody out at the District 4 side of things, as well as the 2 City of Snohomish representatives that I spoke with, the mayor and the council president. Everett acknowledged that they may have a station that needs to get moved at some point in the future, and that they don't have funding for that on hand at the moment. So again, there was consensus on the importance, on the potential benefit to service levels and financial sustainability, but a lot of room for discussion and sharing of sort of different perspectives as we move forward. So I thought it was starting off at a good place. I'll stop there and see if anybody wants to add any questions or comments based on what I just covered, or your own scan of that document. Okay, I'm going to go forward then and to the next slide here, if you would, Chief. There's starting at page 10 in your packet, you can see this sort of Easter egg colors on the left, different sorting of issues that we will go over in this committee if we move out of the exploratory phase. There's sort of overarching issues about why do we think this is a good idea and how are we going to communicate that to the community. There's the questions of governance, setting up the operation, addressing labor issues. You'll be merging 2 workforces if this proceeds, and then the financing issues. What is the financing package? How do you know it will be sufficient and sustainable over time? So these are the issues that we will be working through as a committee, and will all show up in some capacity in the RFA plan at the end of the day, once you have provided direction to us. And then my approach on this is to sort of tackle everything simultaneously so that we don't save, for example, all the discussion of governance to the last minute. We want to start talking about governance and finance and operational issues at a general level early on, and then just move to greater specificity as we go. That's sort of the approach that I like to take with this, because it will help us usually help us flesh out any go, no-go issues sooner rather than later. The next slide here is also reproduced in your packets at page 12. If you proceed out of the exploratory phase all the way to startup, there are different cost components that you should anticipate, just so that there's no big surprises. This sort of maps them out at a high level. You've got me working, facilitating the discussion as we go. You've got communications as we go, legal advice as we go, and Brian Schnurr, who is general counsel to District 4, will be the lead legal counsel for us on this effort, and we will keep City Attorney David Hall in the mix as we go, so that he's comfortable as we go as well. Once we move into the plan development phase, it's my recommendation that we bring on a financial analyst person that can help us build, that 7-year financial model that tells us what do we need in terms of reserves and starting levy rates and the benefit charge structure, and what kind of revenue can that be expected to generate, what kind of costs can we be expected to incur, and will we be, will we know we have enough cash on hand to keep things right side up over 7 years. And so that's a major undertaking, and Bill Cushman, the former city finance director in Everett, has been doing this for fire districts around the state for years, and somebody like him and his model, which is pretty impressive in terms of its flexibility and your transparency, is who I would anticipate we would try to bring on. If you get to the point of having completed the RFA plan and adopting it and picking a ballot date, we would then be looking to folks to help us with the public outreach and education effort, which would probably mean a public education consultant and some mailings to all the voters. And there will be, of course, also the cost of the election. And if the voters approve the creation of the RFA, you'll have some startup costs, and those tend to be around human resources issues, setting up your books on a new organization, and some organizational development, bringing the two labor groups together. So that's hopefully just so that there's not a lot of surprises there. Just wanted to cover that quickly. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, let's just keep going then. I think where we're going to keep going from here now, though, actually, is I'm going to stop talking. And we're going to turn this over to Chief DeMarco and Chief Waller. And so this is so that my PowerPoint stuff is done at this point, and we're going to dive into their presentation, which sort of gives you sort of top line data about how the two departments work right now. And Chief DeMarco, I'll turn this over to you, or Chief Waller, whoever is taking point.
Chief, you want to go first? Is Karen gonna run it for us?
I'll run it. I'm just gonna, let me find it on my screen here.
A billion documents open.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep, looks good.
All right, so Chief Waller and I walked through this briefly this morning. This shouldn't take very long. We've already done introductions. And so really this, you know, I told this to our team yesterday when we met, and I just want to share with the group that as a reminder, this is a fairly simple presentation and not designed to insult anyone's intelligence, but because we're building a case from the ground up, we have to start with the fundamentals of specifically what is a fire department, and what is it that a fire department does, and why does it cost the money that it does, and where is the value that it returns. And so we'll start with this first presentation, which is a very basic demonstration of the two organizations that serve our communities. It was mentioned in the themes that both the City of Everett and the District 4 Snohomish folks, we all value a community fire department. And the goal at the end of this is not to create a conglomeration that is not a representative community fire department. We believe that we can build a system that represents both communities very well. And we'll start by talking about these 5 functions. So first is the type of agency, and the theme throughout this presentation is that the fire district will be in blue on the left and the City of Everett's features will be in green on the right. And we'll start with Dawn taking you through the form of governance, the type of organization that Fire District 4 is, and then I will take you through the City of Everett's. So Dawn.
And this will be an overview, so I'm not going to go into every slide in detail, but in general, a fire district is a special purpose district. We're set out to do one thing, and that's provide fire service. Taxes mainly come from different types of property taxes, whether that's the general property tax, EMS levy, M&O levy, or bonds. Fire districts can do a benefits charge like we may talk about, even if they're not part of an RFA. The nice thing about a fire district is our money is all set aside, so anything that's that we don't spend in a year because we did better than we thought in the budget goes into our savings, and we can build reserves up that way. And the budget is very clear and straightforward, as you will see in future presentations.
Okay, and so different from a special purpose district, the City of Everett is a general purpose district. We're a first class city, a charter city with a strong mayor and council form of government. We collect revenue in a variety of ways, including property tax, sales tax, B&O tax, and then a variety of fees for service. It's a full service city, and for a city of Everett's size, we, through many other studies, have found that the City of Everett provides a very large range of services for our community, perhaps more so in many cases than other cities of our size. But within the city government, we have a variety of city departments. We have the fire department, obviously, which is what we're talking about today, the police department. We have human services, parks, and facilities, legal, finance, the human resources department. All of these separate city departments work together to provide service to the citizens. I'm going to go to the next slide.
So for us, everything we do is either an internal function or Sometimes we hire it out for a third-party contractor service. So our budget, financing, HR, IT is all either done by us or paid for out of our general fund. The fire district can be either 3 or 5 commissioners. We have a 3-board commission right now. The commission typically hires a chief who administers the daily operations of the department.
And for the city of Everett, the fire department's budget is maintained by the city finance department, and obviously we work very closely with them during the budget cycle every year to develop the upcoming year's budget. But I am responsible to the finance department and the mayor's office to make sure that I live within the dollars allocated to my department. We talked about the governance structure here. And in the case of the Everett Fire Department, the mayor selects the fire chief, and the city council swears in the fire chief, and then I serve at the mayor's discretion. And so then we'll talk a little bit about the types of departments that we have in relative comparison to the services and populations that we serve.
So our fire district is a combination of a city and a fire district. The city annexed into the fire district a while back, but the city department, the original department, started in 1888, and the fire district was formed in 1942. Originally, the fire district contracted with the city, and it kind of bounced back and forth throughout time until we ended where we are. Obviously, we serve the city of Snohomish and the surrounding area, about 60 square miles, 32,000 people, and the Centennial Trail, the Snohomish River run through our district, and we have a fairly large training center within our district.
And in Everett, the Everett Fire Department began serving the community in 1892. We serve within the bounds of the city limits of Everett. It's approximately 48 square miles, a large portion of which is Port Gardner Bay. So it's 31 square miles of land. The current population estimate is about 112,000 people, with another 40 or so thousand that migrate into the city every day to come to work at the Boeing plant and the various. We have a larger daytime population than we do nighttime population, because people come into the city to work and then they go home into the suburbs at the end of the workday. Most everyone in this meeting is familiar with the city of Everett, but obviously we are a deep water port. There is a naval station on the waterfront, and then Everett is home to the world's largest aerospace manufacturing cluster, where the Boeing plant and its supply companies are located in the city. And we service the plant as a fire department and as a city. So it's a fun community to be a firefighter in, and we're a proud organization, just like District 4 is. Here's just an overall view. Firefighters tend to be map-based thinkers, and the question is what does this look like on the map? Because we've all driven between Everett and Snohomish at some point in our lives. And you wonder, well, what does this look like when it lays out on a map? So obviously in this picture, the city of Everett is in green. Fire District 4 is in light blue, and then the darker blue core is the incorporated area of the city of Snohomish, which District 4 serves. And then also included, just for reference, is some what we would call no man's land, which is managed by the Department of Natural Resources, or DNR, between the two entities, where both District 4 and the city of Everett are routinely called in to provide service in those areas, but collect no revenue from those areas. So that's an overview. The red dots are where our fire stations are located. I'll switch to a view closer of Snohomish, and then Don can talk to you a little bit about their 4 stations.
So we have 4 stations. We only run out of 3 of them. Station 40, the far west station, is not staffed and houses extra equipment. But we run 3 people out of Station 41 and 42, and 4 people out of Station 43 on a daily basis. Obviously, the call volume is at the city center, and that's why we have 2 stations there, and then the far east station to serve that into the edge of the district.
Okay, and then a closer look at the city of Everett. Like Snohomish, the city of Everett is an old city, and then an interesting feature of our community is that you might not think of it this way, but the city of Everett is a geographic peninsula. And with the metro portion of Everett and the old part of the original city of Everett in the peninsula, we see a fair amount of, relatively speaking, fire activity in the peninsula area. And so we have to staff around the demand for that service. So we have 6 fire stations, with the largest being Station 1 there in the center of the map, with 12 people each day, and then the rest sort of spread out in the peripheral stations. And that's sort of the overview of what the fire protection network looks like in both District 4 and the city of Everett. So now we'll talk a little bit about the services provided by each department. It's broken out in a very simple chart here, and I'll let Don talk about his first.
As you can see, we provide most services just like Everett. The stars on the technical rescue, the water rescue, and the hazardous materials. We've just started those programs and are in the middle of training people, so they will be up and running in about a year, or when it comes to the technical rescue and the hazmat, be participants in the county teams. We do not have a fire marshals or fleet services. We really don't do anything with fire marshal. The county or the city does that, and fleet services we again hire a third party. Lately, it's been mostly Surfer, Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue, and we do not have any. Virtually no private ambulances in there. They transport a handful of times a year, but we do almost entirely all of the transports, ALS and BLS.
Okay, and so the City of Everett Fire Department offers the same services that District 4 does, with the addition of being a founding organization in the countywide hazardous materials response team. We also do internal fleet services. And currently, the City of Everett does use a contracted private ambulance service to take approximately 2/3 of our BLS transports to medical facilities. Although over the last 3 years, we have transitioned to doing more and more BLS transportation, and are very open to continuing that service and growing it as needed. I've presented this same item to all of the Everett firefighters over the last month, and one of the very simple examples that I use for them to talk about efficiencies in this discussion is this box around fleet services. When we conceptualized an organizational chart for what a merged entity might look like, we employ at Everett 2 emergency vehicle mechanics, and by adding in District 4's fleet, we would really need to add a third mechanic. And I hate to add people to an org chart because in my mind that adds expense. But as soon as Chief Waller looked at that same organizational chart, he realized that it would be a savings for District 4 because the cost of a full-time emergency vehicle mechanic is less than you pay for the services to maintain your fleet elsewhere. So we have the facilities, we have the shop, we have the tools, and then by adding a third person, we would be certainly more able to serve a larger fleet at lower cost overall. And that's just a tiny example, but a good one to illustrate some of the efficiencies that we're looking for in these conversations. Well, and I forgot to fix this, but just a relative comparison of the call volume in Everett and Snohomish. Everett answers between 22 and 23,000 incidents a year. It's been down over the last year during pandemic. And District 4 operates 3,500 to 3,600, 3,800 calls a year. And so relative to the number of employees, it's about a similar incident volume across both organizations. Anything you wanted to add to that, Chief?
No, thank you.
So how do we compare in staffing? And I'll let Chief Waller talk about District 4.
So we have 30 full-time firefighters that cover most of those 10 positions a day. 5 administrative chiefs, 5 non-uniform civilian support staff, and then what's kind of different about District 4 is we also have 25 part-time firefighters. We do have some volunteers, but they're chaplains. But our part-time firefighters work less than 120 hours a month and fill in for those spots to get us up to 10 a day. So they work as a same level and same training and same requirement as our full-time firefighters, just less hours per month to fill that staffing need. So our total staff is 65, but we're maintaining 10 on a day. Our shift structure is we work a 49-hour work week. Our labor force does, our full-time firefighters, on a 3 platoon shift. So they have Kelly days that that they take off to get their hours down to 49. And we have 2 bargaining units. The battalion chiefs are in their own, and everybody below battalion chiefs is in another one. And then this kind of breaks down our non-uniform staff: 3 exempt chiefs and 5 civilian and 25 part-time. We have 32 in the local.
And Everett is 195 employees currently at Everett Fire. 168 of those are in suppression. We run 4 platoons on a 42-hour work week with just 4 exempt chief officers and 3 exempt civilian staff to work with the city, representing the citizens' interests when we negotiate with the IAFF. I'll move on to the next slide. Very briefly about facilities and apparatus. So, Don.
Like I said, we have 4 stations. 1's not staffed. 2 are jointly owned with the city. I know this comes up a lot, and it's like I told Karen, it's a really basic issue. The issue is really resolved, and we can execute that agreement whenever we want. We're looking at trying to do a slightly different agreement that would be better for the citizens, but that's still up in the air. But either way, whatever ownership we have, if we form an RFA, we just transfer with RFA, so it shouldn't change or affect anything in these discussions, and really shouldn't spend much time worrying about that. We do have a large training center, classroom, and auditorium for our size, so we do host a lot of training, classes, community events, community meetings in our auditorium, and so that's been very useful for the community. We are in the middle of a process of doing our strategic plan, our capital plan, and our standard of cover, and likely we'll be replacing 3 stations in the next 1 to 5 years, and we have a fair amount of reserve to do most of that.
By comparison, Everett is 6 stations. We have an administrative campus with a warehouse, our automotive shop and administration building. We do have a drill field that is not as extensive as District 4's, but we make a lot of use of it. And then in terms of projected capital needs, all of our stations are in fairly good shape, except for one. One of them has reached its 50-year mark and really is by design due to be replaced. With no current plan to do that. We hope to be able to do that in the next decade. In terms of vehicles.
I'm not going to go over them all because most of them know. One thing I'll point out is we do have some differences. We are more rural, so we do have a tender, a truck that carries a bunch of water. That's one of the differences. We have an MCI unit for major medical events, staffed with just extra supplies that would be needed in an incident like that. And that's probably the biggest differences.
Yeah, and we have a fleet typical for an organization our size, protecting an urban area. And I won't go into the details of the vehicles, but you can sort of see the comparison of the vehicle list on the screen there and in your packet. Where does the money come from? Did you want to add any comments to these, Don?
The biggest thing I would add is just to point out, because we are a special purpose district, the reason our maintenance and operation looks bigger in percent-wise to Everett is because of all those things that we have to do as an organization that is done by other departments in the city, HR, IT, finance. All those things we pay for technically falls under our maintenance and operation because we're using contractors to do it and not internal in-house labor. So a lot of that stuff, if you took that out, I think our pie charts would be more closely aligned.
Yeah, and I agree, because the charts that you're seeing here do not include, those are all dollars budgeted for the fire department. They do not include the dollars in the other funds that the city fire department draws from that fund things like vehicles and buildings. So we would be much more comparable. This is just a breakdown of the overall expenses, and I think not to be too detailed here, but from a high level view, fire departments that are run well all look like this. You would see remarkable similarities. So all the real difference between District 4 and Everett is the scale, but otherwise the way that we spend our dollars is almost identical. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but otherwise, in the interest of time, I'm just going to push on. And then revenue, both Fire District 4 and the Everett Fire Department also generate revenue. In the case of the city of Everett, instead of property taxes, we receive a general fund allocation. But we call that revenue for the purposes of operating this department. Otherwise, both organizations have an EMS levy. Both are receiving GEMT reimbursement. And then there are a couple of other miscellaneous dollars that trickle in addition to transporting people to the hospital. So again, remarkably similar in terms of the types of revenues, and the only real difference is the scale. And Don, I'll let you talk about your levy rate.
So our general fire levy is at $1.45 a thousand. That was passed in 2017, and it was passed with the ability for the board to increase that by 6% a year through board action, and that 6% allowance lasts through 2022. We also have an EMS levy that was passed in 2019, and it's a permanent EMS levy, and it currently is at 47 cents, 47.5 cents a thousand. And that's our two funding sources that are through taxation.
Okay, and the only number here of interest for the Everett, city of Everett is this $1.30. So the city of Everett does not collect a fire levy. We have to approximate what a fire levy would look like to run the Everett Fire Department as we know it today. And so we won't go through the math here, but we can share that in the future. But we have incorporated all of the expense of the Everett Fire Department, including the 10-year projection for capital needs, including the replacement of Fire Station 2, which is the one that is 50 years old. And then we do an equivalency so that we can give an apples to apples comparison. And we operate the Everett Fire Department at about $1.30 per thousand so that we can compare it to the $1.45 that Fire District 4 operates with. That is the last of the slides. We've taken you through these 5 elements of a fire department, and in future meetings we will spend more time diving into the details of these, but I'll stop talking and ask if anyone in the meeting has any questions that they'd like to ask. I apologize for the speed with which we're moving through this meeting.
That's good. So do folks have any questions or just observations about what you saw there? Did anything surprise you or stand out, like how similar the budget components are, or distinctions in services? Anything draw your attention here as we went through this? I was surprised by the water, the number of acres of water that are in your territory, Chief DeMarco. And that's not really a city boundary issue, it's a service responsibility issue, right?
Well, it's both. Actually, the city boundary extends out into the bay, and we are called out into the bay surprisingly frequently to provide both rescue and fire protection.
Interesting. And I was checking the population of the District 4 in Snohomish. The city incorporated is about 1/3 of their total population. So I thought that was kind of interesting to know going into all of this.
Connecting with that, Councilmember Bader here, the fact that there are 2 stations in the city of Snohomish was kind of surprising. Is there some historical precedent there? Is that the plan going forward as well? A need?
Good question.
It's the same as we put the cities where the call volume and the transportation network is to access it. So although the 1/3 of the population is in the city, we haven't done the numbers because that's part of the standard of cover. I would say far more of our call volume is in the city, and our risk for sure is more in the city. And our assessed valuation is probably more in the city. So it's not, population doesn't give us a good sign. So the transportation networks like 41 down south allows us to get to our unincorporated areas easily. It's right on the edge of the city, and same with Station 43 up north. We can get out to Phobes Hill and our west end because of the transportation network. Really.
One of the things that the Snohomish representatives that I talked to, the mayor and the council member, both mentioned that they are starting to see taller buildings in the city which piqued their interest in Everett being part of this discussion, because obviously Everett serves a highly urbanized area, and at least the city leaders out in Snohomish saw themselves as becoming slightly more urbanized in the near term, and that was of interest to them. So, commissioners, District 4 commissioners, Commissioner Merritt, I think I saw you come in, or did I miss that? I can't see him.
Yeah, I'm here.
Here, okay, well, welcome. We're glad that you are here. I just want to ask if any of you gentlemen had any questions or observations after having seen the presentation from the chiefs. Did anything stick out to you that was kind of interesting as you think about the RFA discussions?
Yes, this is Commissioner Flath.
Hey, Commissioner Flath.
The chief was mentioning that you take care of the folks at the bowling plant. Is that right?
Yes.
Isn't there a fire department at the Payne Field as well? Or is that part of the Everett system?
Payne Field has it's a single fire station fire department that services the airfield and the surrounding buildings. And that's managed by Snohomish County. The Boeing company has a single station fire department on the Boeing plant to service the plant, and they provide first response for basic life support, EMS, and first response for any type of fire incident. But obviously, the risk on the Boeing property is dramatically larger than either one of those two stations can manage. So we provide paramedic service to the Boeing plant. We're out there every day. It's basically a city of 40 to 45,000 people during business hours, and we provide advanced life support and the bulk of the fire suppression response on the Boeing property.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the commissioners in District 4 or observations? I'm seeing a shaking head there, and not.
Nope, I don't have any questions. No questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, chiefs. If there are no other questions or comments, we would then go ahead and move to our next agenda item, which is to hear from union leadership. And I think that's Sebastian and Lieutenant Mansfield. Is that correct? And gentlemen, we have 10 minutes on our agenda to hear anything that you would like to bring forward to the group at this point. And we're going to make sure you have an opportunity, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, to offer comments at each and every one of our meetings, so that we make sure we are staying in touch with our labor partners as this discussion proceeds.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I don't think that we'll take too much time in our discussion, but I think we've met as union groups and we've had some good discussion about this. I think we're both excited to be involved in the process and excited that you're providing us the opportunity to be here from the beginning so we can learn more about each other's organizations and what we have planned for the future as we move forward towards investigating the idea if we want to think about possibly someday becoming consolidated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sebastian, did you want to add something to that?
No, it was very productive conversation, and Local 46 is fully committed to moving on with the process.
Thank you. And thank you in advance for coming to these meetings and sharing any concerns or ideas that you have with us to how we can be successful from your perspective. And if we're missing something that we need to consider, you have a really important voice in this whole effort. Okay, so I think that gets us down to our one possible action item, which was just approving some fairly straightforward, I hope, ground rules, which are in your binders back at the, let's see if I can get it right this time, at the roles and rules section, right behind the mission statement. There's a set of proposed ground rules, which are just sort of, and Cassie's probably heard me say this before, if you escaped from kindergarten with a passing grade, you probably are okay with these rules. But just to double check, everybody should take a quick look at these, just about how we will work together and stay focused and constructive and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and respect that we may have different positions, and that's okay. We need to work through those together. We will try to start and stop on time. I'll keep track of any requests for information. We'll share the plans for the next agenda. We'll take notes and ask you to approve the meeting summary at the beginning of the following meeting every time. Please let me know if you can't come to a meeting. If you can't make it, that's fine. Life happens. But if you can't come, I'd rather know that in advance than sitting around wondering and or trying to desperately track you down on your cell phone. So just let me know, email, phone, that's totally fine. And my job is to be the sort of the neutral party in the middle, trying to keep us on track with the meetings, trying to help structure the meetings in a way that's helpful for you, and to make sure that you get the information you need to make informed recommendations as we go forward. Anybody have any concerns or questions about the proposed ground rules?
No.
Nope.
You guys want to do a thumbs up on these? Can you live with these to sort of guide our process? I'm seeing some thumbs. All right. Thank you. Are you okay with these, Council President Stonecipher? Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, that was our first official action. We have ground rules. Thank you. Before we go to our roundtable, I'll just share briefly what the plan is for our next meeting. And I had a question for you about that. Our second meeting next Friday, the 9th, same time, we're hoping to review what would be the committee's more detailed rules about decision making as we move forward. And I will ask you if you want to take time in these exploratory meetings to adopt that now, or hold off on that until we hit the second phase of effort of actually diving into the plan. And then we're going to hear, the main presentation is from the chiefs, to hear what they see as the case to be made for why this is something that they are interested in exploring. What are the advantages? How can you guys, what synergies are there between the departments that could be achieved by joining them in a unified new organization? What challenges do they see? And so that's going to be the focus of the presentation next time. The one question I had for you is whether or not a brief sort of a RFA 101 would be helpful. We've got some information in the packets about RFAs as well as all the statutes, and you may have already gone, I know that you guys have had briefings on this separately, so I don't want to recover that ground if it is not helpful, but if people think it would be helpful to have a quick, what is an RFA anyway, and how does the funding differ from what we're doing now, and what's their scope of authority and stuff like that, we can certainly stick that in at the meeting next time. So I'll just ask if you guys are like, no, we're totally grounded on all that, we don't need that, or whether you would like to take maybe 10 or 15 minutes and chat about that at the next meeting. Any thoughts about that?
Well, Karen, this is Cassie Franklin. You know, I know you have some examples of RFAs in our packet, and I haven't read through those yet, but I think understanding the differences between the way different RFAs are structured would be helpful. Just some sure. Basics. I feel like I've been discussing the possibility of an RFA for a really long time now, but I don't really understand how the different nuances of the way their different RFAs work. Okay. So kind of having a brief overview of what the different options are might be helpful for me, and probably for a community or anyone who's watching.
And so when I think about that there was this, other folks agree with that? I'm seeing nodding, council members Stonecipher, that they think that might be helpful.
I think, we've got, we have had a briefing. I'm sure I could use a refresher, but to the extent that these public meetings are to help the public understand what we're doing, that also could be helpful for them to hear that information.
So I'm thinking maybe on options, it might be like examples of sort of the flexibility in structuring the governance, the different types of financing packages that people put together that would be applicable in Snohomish County, since you guys don't have a regional EMS levy, you all do it yourselves. And the chiefs can think to some of the different examples of how some of the operating plans and financing plans have come together and how that would be helpful here. Okay, we'll put that in. I think that would be helpful. I can take point on that and have the chiefs take a look as well, or fill in some other parts in particular. So that was it for our plan for the next agenda, and we'll add that. And so that takes us to what we would be doing at the end of each of our meetings, giving you all some time, and we're a little bit ahead of time. Woohoo! Let's see if we can make this happen again. I'm not going to promise, but so we wanted to give you guys a time to sort of go around the room with the 6 commissioners, and then we'll ask the chiefs as well if you want to offer any closing comments from today. I think maybe if we've sort of talked about if you had any questions or observations from the PowerPoint. So I guess maybe some questions you might be helpful, or just sort of like, what are your hopes for this process at this exploratory phase? And are there questions in particular that you think it would be very important to answer in this exploratory phase? So if you have thoughts about that, sort of what you're hoping to get out of these next 5 meetings, and any questions in particular, and sort of your hopes at this stage of the game, those might be good things to share with one another. We'll let the time clock run for 5 seconds while everybody tries to think of what the heck they're going to say about that, and then I'll probably pick on somebody like the mayor to go first, because she's one of my favorite go-to victims. To make a good comment off the fly. So with that, and then we'll just go around the table. I really would like to have everybody have an opportunity to chime in here, and we'll also then at that point give Commissioner Merritt a chance to introduce himself. So Mayor Franklin, any thoughts at this beginning, and questions you want to definitely answer? I'm sorry, Commissioner Flats, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. We seemed to approve the ground rules for what we were doing. And in there it says if we get contacted by the press, we should go to our chair. I don't
right. We don't have a chair.
Pick anybody to be our chair yet. So
right.
Perhaps that's something we should do today as well. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just thinking.
I would say we don't want to necessarily appoint a chair, and I think maybe the interim rule would be if you get contacted by now and you would rather push the question off, I would ask you maybe to refer it to your respective chief for additional information at this stage. I'm thinking that we'll talk next week. I mean, you raise a really good point. I should have noticed that, Commissioner, so thank you. If you decide that we want to do a charter in this initial phase, then we would be picking chair and a vice chair, but you guys may decide that you want to put off that action until after we've gotten through the exploratory phase. So for now, it would be my recommendation that we not have a chair or vice chair at this initial meeting, or potentially we can survive the exploratory phase without one if that is your pleasure. And until we pick one, let's suggest that if the media call you, we'd refer them to the chiefs. Sorry, chiefs, if you have violent objections to that, let us know. Does that work for you guys? Okay, thank you. Awesome. Good question. Thank you, Commissioner. And now back to Cassie. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Karen. Thank you. I really just want to first thank the chiefs for the great information and overview. It's really interesting to, it's that basic information of understanding what a fire department does, but it's just a reminder of how much you all do for our community. So thank you for the service. I think when I think about questions that I have as we explore this, a couple of things that seem important is the culture and tradition of our departments. Both of our departments have been around for a really long time, and there's a lot of history there. And I think that as I've gotten to know our team here in Everett, that culture and tradition of Everett Fire is very important, and it sounds like it's of similar importance to District 4. And so, to me, how do we explore this potential RFA and protect our history and culture and traditions in our departments? And so that's front of mind for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting question there, and a good one that we will consider how we can dive into that one. Councilmember Bader, would you like to, can I oblige upon you to go next perhaps, and then we'll.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of good information. I see we got a lot of it teed up in the coming weeks. Just as we go on, just want to, know more about what makes the commissioners in District 4 feel good about this, and their motivations and how this benefits them. Obviously, looking out for the interest of City of Everett, but want to make sure that it's a comfortable thing as well, and that they feel that they're interested in what benefits them as well. So, thanks.
Thank you. Good one. Okay. Councilmember Stonecipher.
Yeah, well, I think most of the questions that I have already been sort of teed up. I like the question about the cultural fit, but really a lot of what we need to evaluate is really, at the end of the day, we're trying to provide a service to our community and want to make sure that we protect the integrity of that service that we're providing, and be good stewards of our taxpayers' resources. So those are foremost in my mind.
Thank you. Good stewards. All right, I'm going to go to Commissioner Schmacher.
So, yeah, thank you. So my interest in this is, first of all, I think regionalization is inevitable. The question is whether it happens now or 10 years or 20 years or maybe even never, but it seems to be the movement in the county, the state, and at least along the West Coast. And over the years, last probably 10 years, I've been involved in several discussions between different districts that wanted to form RFAs or some kind of merger. And not one of them has, how do I put this? Not one of them has interested me in any discussions about potential merger or RFA formation with District 4 until this one. The difference, I think, is first of all, the desire to keep the culture in both departments. I think some of the capabilities that Everett has that we don't, some opportunities for our members that maybe get cross-trained or maybe even go man a boat or something. There's some opportunities there, I believe, and we'll let the Whitney and his people speak to that. But it just seems to me that this seems like a more beneficial potential merger.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Commissioner Flath.
Yes, I'm happy to be able to be here and be a part of this and help our citizens, I think, make sure they get, as someone else said, the best for their tax dollar and also for our own workers, our firefighters and EMTs, that they continue to be able to provide sort of best service available. I think that's key as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Commissioner Merritt, welcome.
Hello, sorry for my tardiness. It's great to meet you all. I would like to mirror what Commissioner Smoker said and just saying that that the whole culture thing is super important, at least from my aspect, that a department that's a lot smaller doesn't lose its culture to a department that's so big. I think that there's going to be just a ton of stuff to learn from this process as well. I'm just excited to get all the information out and start having discussions.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Anyone want to add anything here from the 6 committee members?
Did Commissioner Merritt have a chance to introduce himself?
Oh, no. Can we have a little short go back on the introductions?
Yeah, so just if you want to tell us your name again, I think we got that part, but how long have you been affiliated with District 4?
Just a little over a year now. Yeah, so just a little over a year.
He has a little more.
There's a little more history.
A little more history than that.
Yeah, a little bit more history. Actually worked as a part-timer here for about 5 years. So I have really deep roots, not just here at the fire department, but here in Snohomish. Born and raised here in Snohomish in town. At the fire department.
Yes.
His father was a longtime chief.
I wanted to leave that out.
Yeah, so he grew up in most of these buildings.
Yes.
Family tree stuff. That's always fun. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Well, I know who to, if I'm lost in Snohomish, I'll need to try to find you, it sounds like. I wanted to thank the chiefs and offer them a chance to say any closing comments here. They have done a ton of work to get us here today, and they have got a big lift in each of the next meetings to bring you forward the deeper dive information that you see on our exploratory plans. So I'm very grateful to them for their effort, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with them. And I wanted to ask either Dave or Dawn if you wanted to say anything on our way out of the meeting here today.
I just appreciate it. Like, I think everybody, I think it's, I think how we're doing this may be a little unorthodox when it comes to RFAs. In other words, typically this kind of exploratory part has been done a little bit more before the planning committee is formed, but I think it's been useful for us as an organization and us as a fire service community as a whole to do it this way. And I think it will pay benefits as we learn together as we go through this process.
Thank you, Chief. Dave?
Yeah, I might go just a slightly different direction for the benefit of the commissioners of District 4 and just say that I know you don't know me from Adam, but I've been around long enough to have classes from Commissioner Merritt's father, and that I grew up in Marysville, and we were kicked around by the Snohomish Panthers football team in the 1980s, and so Snohomish was always the football team that beat us up, and that as an organization that I picked Everett 27 years ago. I made a conscious choice to come and work for Everett Fire, and I'm still surprised that I'm leading this organization most days. That I very much understand the trepidation that you feel about the culture of Snohomish Fire. One of the neat aspects of the two organizations is the age of both organizations. That you probably all know that the city of Snohomish and the city of Everett competed to be the county seat in the 1890s, and that there is more similarities than there are differences when you start to boil the culture down into its important elements. And as the chief of the larger of the two organizations, I want the folks in District 4 to know that we are very, very committed to saving what is best of both organizations, not just making the Everett Fire Department bigger. So we're really looking forward to having that conversation with you, and we appreciate you engaging in these conversations with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All righty, so that is the end of our agenda, and unless there's anything else for the good of the order, I think we can declare meeting 1 successfully accomplished, and we will see you all back here next Friday at 1:30 p.m. And I really appreciate everybody's engagement here and good questions and comments, and we'll keep that up at every meeting, and we'll just power through all this stuff. It's going to be a busy month. We're all going to learn a ton. So thank you in advance for that. And with that, I think we are adjourned.